The weather is about to change entirely across the United States as we are going to be dealing with a much warmer weather pattern. In addition to that, it is going to continue to stay very dry through the end of the month. However, we do think that there will be at least one return of severe weather sometime over the next couple of weeks, and the hurricane season is not over yet either, as we are watching the Caribbean Sea, as there might be more development as we head into early November. So let's begin with what's happening across the entire country this morning, in addition to what's happening in the tropics. And right now we do have a trough that has been moving across the central plains that actually brought some severe weather yesterday to areas like Kansas and Nebraska. That is pushing towards the Midwest, but it is actually weakening, so we're not really expecting much of anything as that continues to move towards Wisconsin, aside from a little bit of rain today and also into early tomorrow. For the rest of the country, though, you'll notice there is barely any cloud cover. This is one of the driest Octobers that we've actually had on record here in the United States. It's been very dry for the most part, the only exception really being the southeast, where Helene and as well as Milton have obviously brought impacts over the last few weeks. We also have Tropical Storm Oscar that is currently back over near Cuba, that is slowly moving to the north and will eventually weaken into a post-tropical cyclone, probably today as it moves towards Bermuda. Now, over the next 7 to 10 days, we are going to see a relatively large weather pattern change. We've been pretty chilly over the last week or so, with below average temperatures for almost the entire eastern tier of the United States, but the warm weather is coming back, and it's coming back even stronger than before. And one of the reasons why is because of our jet stream. This is a look at the jet stream as of right now. Currently, it's pretty zonal, and that's going to be a problem over the next 7 to 10 days, because what that's going to do is essentially trap a lot of heat down here in the southern tier of the United States, and it's just going to build up. You'll see as we go into Thursday and Friday of this week, the jet stream is going to be very lifted off to the north. For this time of the year, by the way, we don't usually see this, so this is a bit more of an uncommon weather pattern for the tail end of October. But again, notice how the jet stream is just way back up here to the north, and what that's again going to do is build a lot of heat down to the south of that jet stream, where all the colder weather is all the way back up here in Canada. So that cold weather is really not going to dive down into the United States. It might skid parts of New England as we go into next weekend, but even then, it doesn't really look like it's going to be impacting many areas. Look at this as we go into next week. It even gets worse. The jet stream is going to continue to lift very far off to the north. One thing that this will do is bring below average temperatures to parts of the western tier of the United States, but unfortunately, if you're anywhere from the Great Plains and eastward, you are dealing with the potential for even some record-breaking high temperatures as we go into the tail end of October. And then eventually, as we go into the end of October and into early November, that is when we might see the return of maybe 1 or 2 severe weather setups. The GFS model does indicate a trough ejecting over the Rocky Mountains. This will become a lot more common in November, where our second severe weather season will really start to ramp up in the Great Plains and even maybe the Midwest. And then as we go into early November, that's when things become a bit more uncertain, but the GFS model currently hinting at more of a meridional jet stream, which means more curvature. That is usually when we see those big severe weather events, winter storms, and even in some cases cold blasts. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen in early November, but that's usually what happens with meridional jet streams. Now, this is one thing I want to point out. This is the 500 millibar height anomalies chart. The reason why I'm showing you this is because it gives a pretty good indication of where we're going to see a trough set up, and it more than likely by the end of October, so around Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, we're probably going to get some sort of low pressure system that goes through the Rocky Mountains and eventually travels in the direction of the Midwest, and this will probably be our next severe weather maker. That'll actually be something to watch for, so that's what we're going to be watching for as we go into next week. But for the time being, the next few days look very quiet. Here's the future radar Thursday and Friday. High pressure dominating the eastern side of the United States. There may be a small trough as we go into the tail end of this week that moves across the Midwest. It's mostly going to be rain. I don't really think we're going to get much severe weather out of that. I don't think there's going to be any setup there for that to even happen. As we go into the weekend, high pressure dominates, maybe a little bit of shower activity on the south side of that ridge, where there's a little bit more ascent back over in North Carolina and Arkansas. And as we go into early next week, that is when we'll have to watch for a trough that'll try to develop over the Rocky Mountains and eventually move in the direction of the Midwest. And again, that remains uncertain what exactly will happen there. The GFS model has it happening around Thursday or Friday of next week, which is over a week out, so it's hard to forecast this, but it does at least show something developing around that time frame. So definitely gonna be something to watch for. Again, not really anything big though overall. Even look at the future radar beyond this. I mean, the GFS model is showing nothing big when it comes to winter storms or anything like that as we go into early November. However, it does show something in the tropics, and we're gonna be talking more about that here in just a moment. Now, in terms of the temperature, temperatures over the next several days. The cold air is basically gone. We are returning to well above average temperatures. But before that happens, a little cold blast over the next couple of days impacting the Great Lakes in New England as we go into Thursday and Friday. Warm air is really going to build up, though, as we go into next week. So be prepared for the potential for record-breaking high temperatures, especially across the central and northern plains and the Midwest. And then as we go into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week, this warm weather is really just going to continue to stick around, where there will be a potential for some record-breaking temperatures. This is the Climate Prediction Center's latest forecast, and this is from Sunday of next week, so the 27th, all the way until Thursday, the 31st. So right around Halloween, they are forecasting a high likelihood of above average temperatures for basically all of the United States, the only exception being the Pacific Northwest and also parts of California. So this weather pattern that we're dealing with will continue to bring record-breaking high temperatures. This is some of the areas that'll see record-breaking highs today. Any numbers that you see on the map are record-breaking high temperatures. That's both today, this is tomorrow, this is Thursday, eventually Friday. It just continues basically all the way into the weekend, where we're going to continue to see areas at record-breaking high temperatures. It is going to be hot over the next several days, especially back over in areas like the Northeast and even in the Southern Plains. And one thing that's happening across the United States that's not being talked about enough is the drought. The drought is just going to get worse over the next couple of weeks. Over 50% of the United States is under some level of a drought, and really it's just getting worse. There's been really no rain in any of these regions over the last several weeks, and we are probably going to continue to see that build over the next week or two. Notice there are some areas that are under an extreme or even an exceptional drought, especially back over in the Southern Plains, areas like Ohio and West Virginia still dealing with those issues as well. We are really hoping that rain does fall in areas that need it, but hopefully it's not nearly as much as what Helene and even Milton did to areas in the southeast. Now, for now, the tropics are relatively quiet. We do have Tropical Storm Oscar that is currently just north of Cuba. It is very weak at this point. It is continuing to move to the north and will eventually go towards Bermuda, but is not expected to bring any major impacts to the United States. Here's a view on infrared imagery of Oscar. You can barely see it spinning at this point. The convective towers are all to the east. There's been a lot of wind shear in this area, so this system is really struggling at this point. Oscar is not much of a concern, though, at this point, other than rainfall, a little bit of storm surge, and gusty winds. What is more of a concern is what we might see develop in early November in the Caribbean Sea. Now, as we go into early November, there is concern that we are at least going to see one more tropical cyclone, maybe even a hurricane develop in the Caribbean Sea. The reason why is because this is going to be a favorable environment with low shear, high oceanic heat content, and also the potential for something forming here does appear likely and unseasonably likely, to say the least. Usually in November, tropical cyclones are developing somewhere here in the southwestern Atlantic Ocean. In this case, a bit more of a rarity that something may develop in the Caribbean Sea. So we need to watch this very closely. I'm not saying that we're definitely going to see a hurricane in November, but it does look like we are at least trending in that direction right now. And the models are really supporting this idea of something developing in early November. This is just one model, but there are a lot of ensemble members that are also showing this scenario. As we go into the beginning of November, something develops here in the Caribbean Sea. Now, as of right now, the National Hurricane Center doesn't have anything in this area outlined for development. With that said, we need to watch this closely because the global hazards outlook for week 2 is actually showing at least a low chance of development. But this is what the GFS model shows. Right around Halloween, a little tropical cyclone attempting to develop. But this is what's concerning. With the current weather pattern that is likely as we go into beginning of November, this system, if it does develop, could really stall for a while, and that could lead to some pretty nifty intensification and potentially something that's a bit more significant in terms of intensity. Now, this GFS model has it very close to Florida. I'm not saying Florida is going to see another hurricane. Let's hope we don't have another one in the United States, but obviously this is going to be something to watch for, because if something does form, we could see it go in the direction of Florida. And very typically during this time of the year in November, most tropical cyclones go more to the north rather than into the Gulf. So we'll have to watch this again closely. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and we'll continue to keep you posted with the latest on the tropics and also the weather across the lower 48.